Look at the tip of your finger. Imagine a tiny dot smaller than a grain of sand. That's how much fentanyl is enough to kill a healthy adult. This isn't a horror story. It's a real statistic. Fentanyl used to be created as a last resort for cancer patients, those for whom nothing else would help. It's about 100 times more potent than morphine. Just imagine that number, 100 times more potent. When this substance enters the bloodstream, the brain chokes with pleasure. But at the same time, it turns off the signal to breathe. The person doesn't choke in agony. They simply quietly stop breathing and never wake up. That's why most deaths look like a dream. No convulsions, no screams. You lie down, and that's it. People nearby notice only after a few hours. Sometimes not until the next morning. In the last 10 years, fentanyl has killed more Americans than in the entire Vietnam War. More than 200 deaths every day in just one country, from just one substance. And here's what's truly frightening. Most of them weren't typical street junkies. They were ordinary people with jobs, families, apartments. Some started with pills after surgery. It just happened that way. Fentanyl doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care how old you are, whether you have money, or where you live. One use, and your brain is no longer what it used to be. That's why everyone needs to know about it. Not to be afraid, but to understand. Fentanyl is dangerous not only to those who use it. Police officers around the world are losing consciousness simply by touching an envelope containing white powder. No injection, no pill, just a finger grazing the package. This substance easily passes through the skin. A few invisible particles and a person is unconscious in seconds. That's why, when seizing suspicious powders, they now wear full protective gear, as when working with poisons. Human skin is no barrier to this substance. It passes through it faster than most medical gels. This is the principle behind pain-relieving patches. They intentionally introduce the substance directly into the bloodstream. Criminals have long known this property. The powder is hidden in letters, postcards, even children's drawings. The person opens the envelope, inhales the dust, and doesn't realize they've just received a lethal dose. Customs barely distinguishes such packages from ordinary ones. There have been several cases of postmen being hospitalized simply after sorting packages. They had no idea a thing. They were simply unpacking packages and suddenly lost consciousness right there on the job. Emergency services had to urgently change their protocols. Now, before entering an apartment where this substance may be present, they first don a full hazmat suit. Because one accidental mistake is all it takes. This isn't just a theory. These are real cases from reports. There are cities in America where people wander the streets during the day, bent over. They don't fall, they don't scream. They're simply frozen in a strange position in the middle of the sidewalk. The locals have long since stopped turning around. For them, this is a normal scene. These aren't sick or drunk. These are people high on fentanyl. The substance causes a special kind of numbness. The body bends and freezes while walking. A person can stand like this for several hours, then wake up and continue walking as if nothing happened. Entire neighborhoods have become off-limits to tourists and rarely seen by the police. Stores have closed. Cafes have closed. Only pharmacies and needle dispensaries remain. This isn't a movie. These are real addresses on maps of major American cities. Authorities declare a state of emergency. Some cities spend more on overdose antidotes than on school textbooks. Without this antidote, people die right on the streets, and no one can reach them in time. Ambulance crews in these areas are called out to the same address several times a night. One person overdoses 3 times in a week. They're brought back from the brink again and again. It's impossible to refuse, and everyone understands that perfectly well. The most terrifying thing is that this isn't happening in some remote slum. It's happening next to ordinary residential buildings, next to schools, next to playgrounds, and residents have simply gotten used to it because no other solution has been found yet. Fentanyl was invented in 1962 as a purer alternative to morphine. A Belgian scientist wanted to create a safe painkiller. He had no idea that half a century later, his invention would become the deadliest drug on the planet. Everything went according to plan for the first few years. The substance was used only during major surgeries, strictly under medical supervision. Then it began to be produced as patches and tablets for home use. And that's when everything went wrong. Large pharmaceutical companies began actively promoting these patches through doctors. Doctors prescribed them for everything from back pain to toothache. They were paid for it, not always openly, sometimes through conferences and expensive gifts. When the scandal came to light, several large companies paid billions of dollars in fines. But addicts were already on the street. Prescriptions ran out. and they turned to the illegal market. There, fentanyl turned out to be cheaper than anything else. Today, illegal fentanyl is produced in clandestine laboratories, primarily in Asia. They smuggle it in through regular mail, concealing it in merchandise. One small package contains enough doses to kill thousands. On the outside, it looks like a regular package from an online store. Dealers add fentanyl to other substances to enhance the effect. The buyer doesn't even know what they're getting. They think they're getting something familiar, but it's actually contaminated with a deadly additive. This is exactly how people die who never intentionally took fentanyl. Breaking free from fentanyl addiction is one of the most challenging tasks in modern medicine. This substance rewires the brain so profoundly that even after a year of sobriety, cravings return at the mere sight of a familiar smell or place. Fentanyl withdrawal isn't just a feeling of ill health. It lasts for several days, when the body literally goes crazy. Pain, vomiting, a burning sensation, and no relief. This is where most people relapse and return. Doctors use special substitutes that occupy the same areas of the brain but don't produce euphoria. This reduces cravings and helps prevent relapse, but they must be taken for months, sometimes years. It's also an addiction, just a manageable one. Everyone who has survived says the same thing. Breaking free alone is almost impossible. You need people around you, someone who won't let you disappear in the night. Most recovery stories begin with one person who simply didn't turn away at the right moment. Fentanyl is now found even in pills sold as a completely different substance. People think they're taking something familiar, but inside is a deadly additive. This can happen to anyone, literally anyone who even agrees to try it. This is the story of a neighbor, a classmate, a colleague, about someone who told themselves just this once. Knowing this means you have a chance of not being in their shoes. Subscribe to the channel and watch other episodes. It's important.